Imagine trusting someone with your property only to come back and find it turned into something you never agreed to. Something messy, chaotic, and completely out of control now. Imagine that situation ending up in a courtroom where every detail gets exposed. That is exactly what happens in this intense case from Judge Judy, where a landlord brings his former tenant, Elizabeth, to court, accusing her of running a dog boarding business out of her apartment and leaving the place in terrible condition. And from the very beginning, you can feel that this is not going to be a simple disagreement. This is a story about responsibility, boundaries, and what happens when someone crosses the line without permission. The case begins with the landlord explaining his side. Calmly but firmly, he says he rented out his apartment expecting it to be used as a normal living space, not as a business, especially not one involving multiple dogs coming in and out every day. He describes how he started noticing signs that something was off, complaints from neighbors, unusual noise, constant movement, and a smell that did not belong in a residential building. At first, he thought maybe it was temporary, maybe just a guest or two. But as time went on, it became clear that something much bigger was happening, and when he finally got a chance to inspect the apartment, what he saw shocked him. The place was not just untidy. It was damaged, dirty, and, according to him, completely unsuitable for living. He claims there were stains on the floor, scratches on surfaces, and an overwhelming odor that suggested animals had been there regularly, not occasionally. And that is when he decided to take legal action, because in his mind, this was not just a tenant leaving a place messy. This was someone running a full operation without permission and causing damage in the process. When Elizabeth gets her chance to speak, she does not deny that dogs were in the apartment, but she presents it differently. She explains that she loves animals and was simply taking care of dogs for people. She describes it as helping out, not running a business, at least not in the way the landlord is claiming. She insists that she tried to keep things under control, that the dogs were managed, and that any mess was either minor or exaggerated. She suggests that the landlord is overreacting and that the condition of the apartment was not as bad as he is making it seem. And right here is where the tension really builds, because now it becomes a question of perspective. Was this a small-scale situation blown out of proportion, or was it truly an unauthorized business that caused real damage? Judge Judy leans forward, listening carefully, and you can tell she is already analyzing both sides, not just what they are saying, but how they are saying it, because in her courtroom, it is not enough to just tell a story. You have to back it up with logic and facts. She starts asking direct questions, the kind that cut through excuses and get straight to the truth. How many dogs were there? How often were they there? Was money involved? Did the lease allow any kind of business activity? And with each question, the situation becomes clearer. Elizabeth admits that she did receive payment at times, which immediately changes how the situation is viewed, because now it is no longer just helping out. It starts to look more like a business, and that is a critical turning point in the case, because most leases have strict rules about using residential property for commercial purposes, and Judge Judy points this out very clearly. She explains that when you sign a lease, you agree to certain conditions, and those conditions are not optional. They are legally binding and cannot be ignored just because you feel like what you are doing is harmless. The landlord then provides more details about the condition of the apartment after Elizabeth moved out, describing specific damages and the cost required to repair them. He talks about cleaning expenses, repairs, and the effort needed to restore the apartment to a livable state. And this is where the emotional tone shifts slightly, because now it is not just about whether she ran a business, it is about the consequences of that decision. Elizabeth tries to defend herself again, saying that some of the damage could have been normal wear and tear, that not everything should be blamed on the dogs, and that she did not intentionally cause harm. But Judge Judy does not let that slide easily. She makes it clear that intent does not erase responsibility. If your actions lead to damage, you are accountable for it, regardless of whether you meant for it to happen or not. She also questions the scale of the operation, asking how many dogs were being kept at one time and whether proper care was being taken, because overcrowding, or lack of proper management could explain the condition of the apartment, and as Elizabeth answers, you can sense that her earlier claim of it being a small favor is starting to weaken under pressure because the details suggest something more consistent, more organized, and more frequent than just occasional help. And this is where Judge Judy brings everything together in her signature style. She does not get distracted by emotions or side arguments. She focuses on the key issues. Was the lease violated? Was there evidence of a business being run? And was there damage beyond normal wear and tear? And based on the answers and the evidence presented, the picture becomes much clearer. The lease did not allow for business activities, especially something like dog boarding, that could impact the property and other tenants. There was indication of repeated animal presence, and there were documented issues with the condition of the apartment after the tenant left. And as the courtroom listens closely, Judge Judy begins to deliver her reasoning, explaining that renting a property comes with responsibilities not just to the landlord, but also to the neighbors and the building itself. She emphasizes that turning a residential apartment into a business space without permission is a serious violation, regardless of intentions, and that when animals are involved, the level of care and cleanliness required is even higher because of the potential for damage and disruption. Elizabeth listens quietly at this point, perhaps realizing that her arguments are not holding up as strongly as she hoped, while the landlord stands firm, clearly wanting validation for what he experienced. And when the final decision is delivered, it reflects everything that has been discussed. It is not just about punishment, it is about accountability. Judge Judy rules based on the evidence and the terms of the lease, making it clear that rules exist for a reason and cannot be ignored without consequences. The case ends not with shouting or dramatic outbursts, but with a strong message that stays with you long after the courtroom is empty, that using someone else's property comes with limits, and that crossing those limits, even with good intentions, can lead to serious problems. And as you think about everything that happened, one question stands out. If you were in that situation, would you see it as harmless help or a clear violation of trust?